I'd been having conversations with people, and 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 these conversations had to do with the fact that one was unhappy with the way things were turning out in the 90s, um, which was basically the decade in which the world began to inhabit a a, a new order. Let's put it that way. So people born in the late 80s or in the 90s won't actually know what the earlier order was like and how permanent it seemed. But this is not about nostalgia for an older order, but it's about just being aware of the fact that although we sometimes use terms as if nothing has changed, for instance, literature, or poetry or reading or whatever. All the books, all these things have a completely different meaning now. The author and what they're expected to do. That's their very survival as a kind of category or species has quite a different meaning now from what those things meant prior to the fall of the Berlin Wall, prior to the disintegration of the Soviet Union, and prior to the full-on legitimacy of the free market as the only way of understanding things. So people born in the 90s may not be aware that there is actually another way of understanding things, or used to be in not very kind of remote history. So first and foremost, it's for us to be aware of the contingency of what we inhabit. That it's not timeless, although we sometimes pretend it's timeless, and although we use words and categories as if they're uncomplicated, they're available to us in the same way as they would have been in 1960, which is not true. So we were having people were I knew uh, were having conversations about these things, but these conversations never actually found an official kind of domain in which uh, in which they could happen. They remained conversations between people, and of course, some of us, like myself, I began to write about some of these things. I began to write essays in the TLS and in the LRB. Those were the two places that I really mainly began to think around these things. And uh, but in terms of having a kind of context, whether that was academia or whether that was something else, that context was lacking for for the sorts of conversations and ideas and disquiets which we are expressing to ourselves and trying to work our way through as we try to also comprehend what was happening. So one of the reasons why literary activism came into existence was to create this kind of space in which those conversations, which were a kind of self-reflexive type of conversation, where we were trying to kind of not take as givens uh, these categories, some of which we might inhabit, whether you're a professor or a writer or an artist, to actually try to understand what it meant to be these things now, and find a way of a space for talking about them in a way that wasn't otherwise available.